Hey everyone, welcome to another processing video. So today I'd like to show you how I remove people from my landscapes. So you go to the popular rock or the popular waterfall within a national park or a state park, and often you'll find that these places are so popular that you can never catch a moment without people to take a picture. And when you're out in nature, typically you just want to get a picture of the natural landscape without the people. And it can be a little frustrating, but there are several ways that we can deal with this. The first and most obvious way is to simply just clone out the people in the picture. But a lot of times these places are just so popular that you'll never catch a moment where there are no fewer than a dozen or so people in the shot, and it can be difficult to clone out that many people and then have the end result still look fairly natural. So one way that we can deal with that is to take several pictures over a period of time, and we can average them together. But I'm going to show you why that doesn't work in a lot of situations, especially in the situation that I'm going to be demonstrating with, where I was, this is Cedar Falls in Hocking Hills, Ohio. It is the most visited state park in Ohio, and I'm told it's very rare to ever come to these waterfalls, the most popular ones anyway, to ever find them without people. And I found that to be true because this was an afternoon in the middle of the week, and there was still a ton of tourists here. So I'm just going to show you real quickly one of the methods that you can use to average together several different exposures taken over a period of time that sometimes can work to eliminate the people in the pictures automatically. So I've taken a series of photos here over probably 30 minutes or so while I was at this waterfall. And you can see there's people in every shot over this period of time. So I'm going to just show you the average method, which averages together all of those pictures. And I have all of these images loaded up into Photoshop already as layers. And what I'm going to do is convert these to a smart object. Okay, once all of those layers have been combined into a smart object, I can now apply medium blending to them by going to the layers menu and going to smart objects, stack mode, and median, and that's just going to blend together all of those exposures. And so the end result is just going to be the average of all of those exposures. So you can see after that's finished here, if I zoom in, you can still see kind of ghosts of people where they were standing. This is because I simply did not take enough pictures where you have to be able to get enough shots without people in certain places of the photo. And another reason this isn't very good for a scene like this is because other things in the picture are moving also. We have these trees here, and you can see that the leaves are blurred out a little bit because of the averaging of the exposures. And so this is one of the reasons why it's not going to work for this scene, and it's not going to work for a lot of scenes in nature for that exact reason. However, if you're downtown and you're taking pictures of a crowded sidewalk, you're surrounded by buildings and other static objects that aren't really moving that much, but the people in the scene are moving fairly constantly, it's a very good technique that you can use in a situation like that. But I'm going to show you another method where we can just use layers and masking and just take maybe a couple images out of the sequence that we shot over time and look for the least amount of people in each of them. So I've already selected two that I want to use. It's going to be this one and this one, mostly because in one shot we have people on the left side, and in the other shot we have more people on the right side. So they're going to be easier to remove that way. And I'm just going to reset my development settings real quick here, because I want to show you just what I'm going to do to both of these. I'm just going to apply some very simple exposure adjustments here in Lightroom before I load them up into Photoshop. And I'm just going to do this really quickly. I'm going to bump up the exposure, bring up the shadows a little bit and the darks. And I'm not going to make any contrast adjustments because I'll do that in Photoshop. And I'm going to apply the lens correction to that. And I'm just going to apply this to my other picture over here by selecting Control on the keyboard and left clicking and then hitting the sync button over here in the lower right. And I'm just going to make sure that everything here is selected and hit synchronize. Now while these two are selected, I'm going to right click down here in this panel and go to Edit In and Open as Layers in Photoshop. And now that I have both of these layers loaded, I'm just going to simply add a mask and mask these people out. And it doesn't really matter what order my layers are in. I'm just going to switch it out to this one because it already has the least amount of people to clone, or to rather mask out. So I'm going to add a layer mask here with the Add Layer Mask button in the Layers panel. Now with this layer mask selected in this top layer here, we can use the black paintbrush tool to paint black over areas that we want to reveal in the layer beneath it. So that is the power in layer masks, that we can selectively reveal what's in the bottom layers. And so I'm just going to select my paintbrush tool. I'm going to increase the size of it a little bit. Usually I use a very soft brush, so I'm just going to bring the hardness down to 0%, and I'm going to turn the opacity of my brush up to 100%. And now I want to mask out the people here on this rock, and all I'm going to do is just paint black over them, and that's going to reveal the layer beneath them, which doesn't include the people in that shot. See, if I paint black over here, there are people standing in that particular area in the shot. And there's also a person standing here where this guy with the green shirt is, so I'm going to have to I'm just going to have to clone out some of those people, but I can remove the majority of them this way. So I can probably paint out that girl there with the pink shirt. And I'm going to make my brush smaller and just paint her, and see there's a backpack beside her that I'm bringing through. So I'm just going to have to be very careful with how I paint. And I can switch colors to white. I can have white set as my foreground color and go back here and correct some of these areas where I'm bringing in that backpack, for example. Now you can't tell the girl was there, but there's a little dark spot that's been left over here, and that's something we can actually clone out maybe, or paint a texture over it to fix that. Looks like there's somebody here I might be able to paint out. So I'm just going to do that and see what happens when I paint over this. I think it's two people here. So it just brings another person through, but I can paint them out part of the way. It looks like I won't be able to remove this guy either. So that's about as good as we're going to get with the masking option. And if I had more pictures, possibly that didn't include people in these areas, I might be able to take advantage of that and include another layer and use that to paint them out as well. but I didn't have any pictures where I could do that with, so I'm just going to clone these people out, and I'm going to merge these layers, and I'm going to make a copy of this layer here just in case I have to revert back to it if I mess up my image too bad from cloning. And then I'm just going to select the clone tool over here, and I'm going to just clone out these people here. And with the clone tool, you have to set a reference area that the tool is going to draw from, and you just hit the Alt key on the keyboard and just select a place there for the reference. And I'm just going to keep doing that in different places so that I'm not creating repetitive patterns here in the rock. Okay, so now that I have all the people either masked out or cloned out, you can't tell that there was anybody ever in this picture. Now if you zoom in on the rocks where we cloned out those two people, you might be able to you can see some repetitive patterns here, and if I just keep going over some of those portions in the rock, I could probably smooth those out a little bit, but it just depends on how much that bothers you, how much time and effort you want to put into it. In general, I'm going to notice those places except for you. I have a little piece here still to clone out. Now to remove this dark area here, I can take my healing brush tool, just use the sides here as a reference, and it'll help to paint out these dark spots because the healing brush doesn't just clone out the areas, but it will try to replace the color and the texture to match the reference area. And that doesn't look too bad. Of course, I could play around with it a little bit more to get it to look even more natural, but just for the demonstration purposes, I think I'm going to leave it there. And from here, I'm just going to add some of the normal adjustments that I would add to the picture in Photoshop, and then I can make some more adjustments in Lightroom. But I'm just going to go through these here real quick. Alright, so now that I've made all the adjustments that I want to make in Photoshop, I'm just going to keep all of these layers intact, and I'm going to close this, and that should bring it back into Lightroom where I can make additional adjustments. So once it's brought back into Lightroom, I can play around with the exposure adjustments a little bit more if I want to. But I don't add too many adjustments, and then I might add some sharpening to the final image. I apply quite a bit of sharpening. I'll bring it to around 75, and then I'll use this masking here to mask around the details in the shot. And that's it. You can't tell that there was anybody in the picture originally. Unless you have a very discerning eye, you might be able to look at this spot here and see that something's amiss. But for the most part, those little details are only visible to the person that took and edited the picture. Alright guys, so that'll do it for this video. I hope I was able to explain things clearly enough, or at the very least I hope that you were able to get something useful out of this. If you would like to see my editing process in detail, I go into that more in my Patreon videos, so you can become a subscriber to my Patreon and check those out in the link below. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram if you aren't already. All of this is going to be included in the description below. And I thank you for watching. Hope to see you again.